Hello, this is the Climate Response Working Group La Vie en Vert video series. As part of the working group's action plan and in an effort to bring a more cohesive awareness towards climate mitigation, we interview key actors in the Franco-Irish business community who are leading the way in taking their own actions to mitigate climate impact. Today, we welcome Sharon Cronin, Ireland Marketing Manager at Schneider Electric. Sharon, hello.
Hi, Leah. Thanks for having me today.
Of course. Why do you think it's important for a company to mitigate their impact on climate change?
Well, I think climate change is the biggest threat to health, safety, and the sustainability of our world. It's a global problem, it's accelerating rapidly. And quite frankly, I think every business should have a climate action and sustainability strategy. There's so much to be done and there's so little time to do it. And to be honest, I think we really needed to be acting last week, last year, last decade to turn this around. In order to meet climate goals, I think companies need to as well look outside their own walls to the emissions generated along their supply chains. I think the window of opportunity in this is closing. I think the positive of it is that we are seeing a glimmer of hope in terms that there is a mind shift change. So people are now more willing to embrace and invest in change amongst businesses and consumers alike. We actually recently just did a research report in the run up to COP26 called Powering the Change. And more than 60% of the businesses that we questioned across UK and Ireland had all said that they would be following the developments of COP26 and how that might impact the organisation. And in addition to that, when we asked the same respondents, more than 90% of them said that reducing their carbon footprint was going to be a priority for their organisation. So change is afoot, mindsets have definitely shifted, but we need to action that change now.
That is very good to know indeed. What is your company currently doing to mitigate their own impact?
Sure. So actually in the last year, we were named the world's most sustainable company. And the reason I think being is that Schneider Electric is a brilliant example of how the large multinational companies can change their course. They can realign their business goals and fight against climate change. We have been taking, I suppose, a more aggressive approach to mitigating our role in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, given their role as the most significant driver of the climate change. We've also delivered 30% of energy savings globally. When we look a little bit more towards home, our renewable energy sources powers 50% of Schneider Electric's global operations, but then within the UK and Ireland operations, it powers 96%. Within, again, UK and Ireland, we have committed to converting our entire fleet of cars, which is about 1,200, to electric. And we're doing the same globally. So that'll be another 14,000 cars that will go electric. And here in Ireland, we're also planting over 1,000 mixed fruit trees around Ireland. And that's to help encourage biodiversity and to protect and feed our pollinators as well.
Wonderful. What are your company's plans to either further improve or progress in this regard?
Sure. Well, Schneider have actually set up a range of very ambitious targets to combat climate change, and we have these all against a bit of a timeline. So by 2025, we're aiming to have 80% of green revenues. We're currently at 70%. So we'll do this by reducing our CO2 emissions from our top 1,000 suppliers' operations by 50%. By 2030, we will have a net operational emissions, net zero operational emissions, reduction of scope 3 emissions by 35%. And we're also aiming to get to that 100% renewable electricity. By 2040, we hope to be carbon neutral in our end-to-end footprint. And by 2050, to have a fully net zero supply chain. So the big issue or the big elephant in the room is the scope 3 emissions, and the lack of standardization around these commitments is, risking a halt to progress. But Schneider Electric are drastically reducing their scope 3 emissions by having some of our suppliers have already been trained up and they're ready to drive climate action as part of this as well.
Great to know. But in your opinion, what is one thing that companies smaller or, the same size as Schneider, what is one thing that companies should be looking at in order to start or keep mitigating their impact?
Yeah, I mean, I think really there is a multitude of different scalable and affordable solutions that already exist across sectors of the economy. And I don't think that, the purpose and the profit don't have to be at odds. I think you can have sustainable solutions that will work well. So the most obvious ones are going to include renewable energy and electric transportation. But we do have physical and digital technologies that allow everyone from homes to factories to data centers to airports conserve energy. And this has a huge potential to lower our collective carbon emissions. So too does the electrification of heating, because so many buildings around the globe are still coming from the form of fossil fuels.
Mm. So last but not least, what value could the French Island Chamber of Commerce Climate Response Working Group, Le Vision Vert, bring to companies?
I think the more guidance and the more advice available to support businesses, the absolute better, particularly as well, because this is coming from a group of individuals that are passionate about climate change. They really want to drive the message through and they want to help and support. I think the fight to net zero, as I said already, is a global issue, and it's something that I think we should all be sharing as much advice and as much solutions as possible so that we can collectively reach our targets as quickly as possible together.
Well, thank you for all your answers, Sharon.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.